Coming up on CTV News tonight, CPIT staff plan to strike and BNZ announces a new scheme to help small Christchurch businesses. Welcome to CTV News, I'm Kenetta Knight. If you're wondering why you didn't get your morning paper today, it's due to a computer glitch. Publications including the Press, the Dominion Post, Southland Times and the Timaru Herald, which are all Fairfax papers, have been unable to print. One morning paper able to publish using a different computer system was the Taranaki Daily News. The Press has been able to get papers out this year through earthquakes and snow. This is only the second time in a number of years the paper has not been printed. In 2009, a fire stopped the paper going to print. Fairfax's afternoon papers have also struggled to get papers out today. The Manawatu Standard, Marlborough Express and Nelson Mail published condensed versions of the daily paper with delays. Staff at Christchurch Polytech say they are feeling undervalued with employers threatening to take away some leave. Gracie Fee spoke to the Tertiary Education Union who represents staff.
CPIT staff feel as though they have been kicked in the guts and they're being undervalued. Teachers walked out of their paid stop work meeting yesterday after voting overwhelmingly to go on strike in response to their employer's proposal to cut leave and keep pay low. They returned today, but the fight is far from over. The Tertiary Education Union intends to return to the bargaining table to further negotiate changes to the Polytech's offer later this week.
What's happening through the Polytech sector is there's quite a few changes with changes in government policy, quite a few changes in emphasis, and there's a lot of pressure on terms and conditions through the sector. Not right through the sector. In some polytechnics we have the same kind of conditions right across, but in some polytechnics there's quite a move to reduce the amount of leave that tutors take.
Mr Draper was unable to comment as a member of the CPIT staff, but said leave was a massive drawcard and the threat of having it cut by 4 weeks was concerning.
I started teaching in the Polytech sector because of the leave and because I actually love teaching as well. So I dropped quite a lot of salary to come and teach in the Polytech. So to lose that extra leave would be quite a major blow.
Staff at CPIT believe they have made a massive contribution to getting the Polytech back up and running for students after the earthquakes and say the cuts are unfair when other employers in the region are rewarding staff for their efforts.
The Christchurch City Council offered their staff extra leave during this period, and University of Canterbury have offered their staff extra leave during this period, so you can draw conclusions from that.
And it's not just CPIT staff who are upset, it's other institutions throughout the country whose employers are also taking the hard line.
People are pretty angry about these attacks on conditions. They can't really see a justification for it, so there's quite a lot of anger.
However, those attitudes are more of a rarity, with the majority of institutions across the country wanting to keep terms the same.
Most are interested in supporting their teachers, but in some places there seems to be some perhaps ideological approach to, you've got more leave than other people.
CPIT staff have had practice at this kind of thing, with the same performance occurring in 2007 around the time of the swine flu outbreak when employers threatened to cut sick leave. Mr Draper says the discussions went on for months. The outcome, he hopes this time round, will take less time to reach.
The Bank of New Zealand today announced a new scheme to help small Canterbury businesses struggling after the quake. Emily Cooper found out how they're planning to help.
With so many Canterbury businesses getting back up and running and moving to new premises, BNZ Bank is helping by bringing banking services to the doorsteps of earthquake-affected small businesses. The bank has established a mobile banking team with a fleet of 3 cars to travel to businesses. The BNZ Rapid Response Team consists of a number of locally based small business managers who will travel to where they're needed.
We've created what we call a rapid response team for small business. A lot of feedback we're getting from clients is all about we're really busy, working harder than we've ever worked before to keep our businesses going, and we don't have time to come and get good advice from banks. So what can you do to help us? So that was where the concept was born. So we've got 3 vans for a start, and we're looking to grow that to more, and we're going to get some of our best small business managers in them, along with insurance specialists, and actually go out to businesses as a group, visit them, give them advice, do what we can to help get them back up and growing. That's the whole concept around the vans, get them out there, help businesses get back on their feet.
41% of Christchurch businesses have reported an increase in costs, and 22% have reported seeing a decline in revenue since the February earthquake. So Mr Gawley says Canterbury businesses need all the support they can get. And he says businesses are working harder than ever.
Look, I take a personal responsibility. I'm born and bred Christchurch sort of fella, and I really enjoy living here. So I picked up the phone and rang a lot of small businesses that I know and talked to them about what are their challenges. And a lot of the stuff they were telling me was around that they're working harder than they've ever worked. They're back to when they first started their business, out at trade shows, on the phone ringing customers to tell them they're open. And they're working 12-hour days, and they don't have time to talk about their finances and get that side of it sorted. So that was one of the things, and the other one is that they've dried up a lot of their cash resources at the moment. Just to relocate 4 times or 3 times or 2 times, it's really hurt business. But the attitude's there, and the positivity and the resilience to get back on their feet is there. So we want to do something like this so we can go to them.
And he says they will help with something a lot of Canterburyans are struggling with: insurance.
It's common at the moment. People have got insurance policies, they're not sure what they can claim, what they can't claim, how can they extend their insurance policies, and there's a whole raft of complex questions coming out. So we've got a BNZ insurance specialist who deals with all insurance companies and not just with BNZ. So he'll sit with the rapid response team and just sit in the background, pick up insurance policies for small business customers and say, hey, this is what you're covered for, this is some of your questions that you have, and I'll try and answer them best I can.
Mr Gawley says the number of business owners who are still working out of their living rooms and kitchens or sharing space with other small businesses is amazing, and the rapid response team will help all over the Canterbury region.
So anywhere from Rangiora through to Rolleston and everywhere in between. And they're really mobile, which was the key for us. All the guys have been kitted out with iPads so they can make decisions quickly for small businesses, and they'll move around Christchurch as needed. And a big part for me is being flexible. Talking to customers and talking to small business owners, where do you want us to be? So we can just get in the car and go and see you.
Louise Edwards of the Canterbury Business Recovery Trust says this type of initiative is important for getting the message out there that Christchurch is open for business.
I see this as really important. It's a great initiative that the BNZ have undertaken. There's small businesses here in Christchurch are really struggling at the moment, and I think this sort of initiative is something positive about being able to help and support them in rebuilding their businesses.
She says getting the message out there that businesses have relocated and getting re-established is a problem facing small quake-affected businesses.
Well, initially it was probably access to their old premises, and then it sort of moved on to businesses relocating and re-establishing themselves. But now it's about getting out there, getting their name and their marketing out there to show that they're still here, still doing business, they're here to rebuild. So we're seeing a lot of those sorts of approaches need to market, to get to trade fairs, to get out on the road, to rebuild websites, to really show their presence.
Coming up after the break, we look at Marsh House. Welcome back. Residents in the Waimakariri are still reeling about the future of their community.
Linton, hi, you lost your house. You've been working in the community as a community advocate throughout since September. You are now also on the community forum. How do you think the community has responded to the big announcement that was in the press?
Oh, the community is angry, and I think it's caused a lot of stress, particularly with elderly people. There are people who thought they would be able to rebuild. There were people who now look at the map in the paper and don't know which side of the dotted line they are. But the point is, the headline is misleading. At the very least, it should have had a question mark after it. It looks like it's a definitive statement, and people react to that. Now, where you've got a stressed community, where people have since the 4th of September been dealing with clearly what we see around us, expectations, changes, the fact that the Minister had said there would be some time yet before we would know, then a headline like that occurs in the press and people are understandably frustrated, angry, and I think it's remarkably irresponsible, and it smells to me of the sensationalism that you'd expect from Murdoch in the UK. So the Waimakariri District Council has engaged incredibly well with the community. I think we've been fortunate to that regard, and I think we were all progressing along believing that there was a time frame, and yes, it was an absolute shock for people, but in saying that, I believe the Minister was right, because I had in a number of public meetings expressed concern that this area, which was known as Golden Grove, was in parts below sea level. It was subject to flooding. The council themselves admitted that it would not get consent to build if it was a new subdivision. And they're saying, well, we'll lower the roads, we'll put in bigger stormwater pipes, and clearly that to me was a nonsense, and indeed to a lot of others.
I'm with Gerald. And what did you feel when you picked up Thursday's paper, Gerald?
Well, prior to seeing the paper, I was 50-50 decided that this land would be remediated and would be able to rebuild, but I wasn't entirely sure. And I'm still not sure after picking up the paper, because I don't know how much of it is conjecture or how much is based on actual fact and decisions that have been made.
Do you have confidence in the leaders and the processes we're meant to follow when you feel that you're out of the loop as someone that's so directly responsible for what happens?
I have confidence in our local Waimak City Council, because they've always been up front and telling us they've been right at the fore in making plans and carrying them through and informing the public who are involved. But the central government seems to be playing secret squirrels with the whole thing, and just give out snippets of information and really never include people like us in the loop.
Do you think that both the government and the council should be looking at affordable land if the worst case scenario happens and that huge swathe is all red?
Yes, they should. I don't know where they're going to find it, but there are. They'll have to find land that's stable, such as on the western side of Kaiapoi and around Rangiora. But I think that they should release some cheap or affordable land that people can actually afford to buy and build on.
The earthquakes have claimed many of Christchurch's historic buildings, but the home of an internationally famous crime fiction writer has come through unscathed. Samantha Early paid a visit to Dame Naomar's house.
The wooden house, hidden behind trees on the lower slopes of Cashmere Hill, was designed by Samuel Hurst Seeger and built for Naomar's family in 1906. She moved in at the age of 10, and it was her home for the next 77 years until her death in 1982. It has been enlarged over the years and filled with family treasures and antiques she collected from around the world, and despite the quakes, it remains much as she left it. Of course, there was porcelain and glassware broken, along with a large grandfather clock, minor damage compared to other historic homes.
Do come in. Books were everywhere. They just all fell out with great speed onto the floor, so there were books everywhere. But amazingly enough, the things on the dining room table are just about exactly as they were before the earthquake. So it's not. It could have been much, much worse. But we lost our chimney, of course. But apart from that, so much more could have happened, but at least it's still here.
Lovers of history, art, Shakespearean theatre and crime fiction are still able to make bookings to visit the house where the famous writer, theatre producer and painter lived and died. They'll learn about her working habits, her travels, the parties she held, even her cats.
She obviously loved the home, she loved the garden, and I think she actually loved the secretiveness of it, because it was very difficult to find early on. So that's the main reason. The next good reason is that it was designed by her Seeger, and though it has been added on in several places, it is still basically her Seeger house.
The caretakers of the house, who are all volunteers, are hoping to have it cleaned up by September, and they'd like to welcome more visitors. Eve says it's one of only 4 literary houses in the country to be available for public viewings, and for quite some time it was the world's only home of a crime fiction writer to be open for public visits. And with so many Christchurch historic buildings lost, it's among the survivors.
It is a very well-known house, and she is extremely well-known still in America and in England. And it's a shame that she's not better known in New Zealand.
Coming up after the break, your local weather. Welcome back. Local MP Jim Anderton says youth suicide will continue to rise as youth unemployment and youth suicide go hand in hand.
I take a very pragmatic view of this. I know there are some clinicians and theoreticians on suicide who claim that there's no direct relationship between unemployment and suicide, and they say that mental health is the issue. Well, of course it is. 90% of all suicides, and we've got to remember that it's not just a youth suicide thing. 80% of people who commit suicide in New Zealand are over the age of 24. People think that suicide is all happening to young people. It's not actually. The majority is happening to all ages, and particularly over 24 years old. But we do have a very high youth suicide rate. And unfortunately, I lived through the period of the 80s and 90s where we had virtually mass unemployment among young people, in some areas as high as 30 or 40%. So that meant that nearly half of all kids who were leaving school were going on the dole. Now, I lived through that period and I was in close contact with my electorate and families and kids in that position, and I literally saw the light go out in the eyes of young people. They tried to get jobs, they applied for 40 or 50. I know cases where they'd put in, you know, almost 100 applications with CVs and they never got one single reply from an employer, not one. And what it did to them was demoralise them, and it gave them a sense of worthlessness, no self-worth. And therefore, once you get to that point, you start to think that there's no worth in your own life, and therefore it doesn't matter whether you're living or dying, actually. So that was a very troubling experience for me, and I saw it firsthand. So you'll never convince me that unemployment doesn't lead to a loss of self-worth, doesn't lead to depression, doesn't lead to suicide, because I think the connection is absolute. And when I see the figures that are building up now, we have 3,000 young people in New Zealand, in Christchurch, as I speak, who are unemployed. And I see the same pattern starting to emerge as was emerging in the 80s and 90s. And suicide doesn't happen as straight away. It's a downstream effect. So you'll see in the figures of the 80s and 90s, it was 3 or 4 years after the peak of unemployment that you got the suicides, because it doesn't happen instantly.
Pete Smith hit the streets of Amberley to find out how North Canterbury residents feel about not having a central city to shop in.
All right, well, we've come out to the country, and as you can see by the number plate there, they think a bit differently, don't they? But my old mate here, you're from Mutton now, are you?
Yeah, Mutton now, yeah.
Yeah. So
about 11 k's north.
So you've come into the big town of Amberley?
Yeah, just to get a haircut. And...
Now, the question today is, do you miss going into the city at all in Christchurch?
No, we quite enjoy going into the city.
Yeah, but what about with nothing there, though, now?
Oh, yeah, that's a bit disappointing.
Yeah, so do you miss Valentine's?
Yeah.
Yeah? I bet her indoors does.
Yeah, no, it's quite a norm. We've only been here 12 months, right?
Right.
And I was going to take my partner into Christchurch to see all the big churches. And, and then it all happened. It all fell down.
Do you miss not being able now to go into Christchurch Central?
Yes.
Yeah, what do you miss most?
Selection of shopping, especially the girls miss that more than the boys, obviously.
Yeah.
But primarily it's the choice. Obviously, Rangiora got a reasonably good town centre, but it's not quite as comprehensive as Christchurch was.
So how often would you have gone into town?
About every 3 weeks.
Yeah, right, so you're quite regular?
Yes.
Yeah, now it's not there.
Well, we still go in, but we're mainly confined to the north end of the city, obviously. And, you know, that's pretty good, the north side, but it's a limited choice, of course.
Now tell me, have you noticed it busier out this way now?
Yes.
Yeah,
considerably busier.
I don't miss going into the city.
You don't? Did you used to go on a bit?
Well, I used to live further north in Waiau, and you know, I've got everything down here that I need, and I've got my parents in Christchurch, so I go down there every now and again. But
you don't miss the shopping?
I don't miss the shopping, no.
Has the place got busier here?
Oh, yeah, tremendously. Yeah, a lot busier in the last 2 months, I'd say.
A lot of new people?
A lot of new people, a lot of interest, a lot of people coming through, just driving around and looking at houses and open homes.
And you think they'll settle and stay?
I think so.
And that would be good?
I think that would be great, yeah.
Good for you guys.
Good for the township of Amberley, I think. You know, we need a bit more population here to justify the new countdown and the shopping mall.
It's been such a long time since I've been in there anyway. I didn't really go in very much, so...
So there's not a shop you miss or a place?
No, not really, no.
So everything's here in Amberley that you want?
Oh, no, I wouldn't say that.
So where do you do your shopping?
Rangiora.
Now that's got very busy, hasn't it?
It certainly has, yeah.
But so's the town of Amberley got busy.
Oh, I haven't noticed quite so much.
Not
no,
new
but-
people coming out to live here?
Oh, a few, yep. Probably more so around the times of the quake, but...
Do you miss coming into Christchurch at all?
Oh, it's changed a lot now. It's so different. We haven't actually been into the main central city because the red zone. We keep out of it.
Do you miss going into town now, into the Christchurch city?
Oh yeah, there's a little bit of a tag really, because you do want to get in there to just get a couple of groceries that you can't get out here. But
What about other shopping? You know, do you miss the bigger shops?
yeah, I guess I miss like a couple of like the big shops that have got down, and then but you've just got to somehow get past it.
That's CTV News. I'm Kenetta Knight.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.